What if the blood of Christ didn't save humanity, but fed something immortal? Well, stick around for this chilling episode to find out. Let's get into it.
Don't drink that!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Don't Drink That. So, today I've got something very special for you. Very terrifying. And it is about Jesus. Jesus doesn't sound all that terrifying, right? But let's look at it from this perspective. What if Jesus was a vampire? Now, I made a short about this not that long ago to kind of sort of tease this episode. But how crazy would that be? You know, think about the conspiracy behind religion. And what if Jesus was a vampire this entire time? Well, before we get started, I just want to say welcome to the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share it if you would like. I'd love that. But let's talk about vampires a little bit. We're going to skip over the Jesus aspect of the story, and let's get into the lore, the vampire lore a little bit. What do you think? All right. So the complete lore history of vampires from the earliest recordings to modern myth. Vampires in various forms are older than written history, much like religion. While the fanged aristocrat we know today is modern, the idea of a creature that feeds on life, usually blood, appears across nearly every ancient civilization. There is a timeline that I have for you guys. From the earliest proto-vampires, medieval vampires, Gothic literature, and modern canon. The proto-vampire archetype. Before writing existed, humans told oral stories about night spirits that sat on the chest of sleepers, demons that drained all life essence, corpses that returned due to improper burial. These archetypes later evolved into specific vampiric beings worldwide. Ancient Mesopotamia, 4000 to 2000 BCE. The earliest written vampire-like beings appear in Sumerian and Akkadian tablets. The Ikamu, described it as a restless dead spirit, roamed the world, draining the life force of the living, created when someone died violently or wasn't buried properly. To me, that sounds a little bit like a zombie. The Utuku described vampires as malevolent underworld spirits and attack travelers and drink their vitality. Lilitu described vampires as the predecessors of the Hebrew Lilith, which is interesting. Female night demons who drank blood, seduced men, and stole newborns. That sounds more like a succubus to me, but, you know. These beings are the oldest cultural ancestors of vampires. Ancient Babylon and Assyria, 2000 to 500 BCE. In the Babylonian demonology, winged night demon, they drank blood, associated with owls, darkness, and seduction. Later shaped Jewish folklore. Some cultures treat Lilith as the first mother of vampires, which is kind of interesting. Ancient Greece, 1200 BCE to 300 BCE. The Greeks recorded multiple vampiric creatures. Impusa, I think that's how you say that, a shape-shifting demon, drank blood and seduced young men, sometimes described with flaming hair or brass legs. Lamia, again, these are Greek words that I'm not really entirely hip to, so forgive me. I'm going to sound like an idiot here a little bit, so sorry. A queen turned child eating demon, said to suck blood from babies. possibly the origin of the seductive female vampire archetype. The Stry, night birds or witch demons. They drank blood. They could shapeshift. Greek Stry evolved into Romanian Strigoi, one of the closest ancestors to the modern vampire. Ancient Rome, 500 BCE to 476 CE. Romans adopted Greek myths but added Stree, a bird-like woman with a thirst for blood, responsible for nocturnal attacks linked to witchcraft and dark magic. The word striga becomes the root of many European vampire legends. Ancient India, 1500 BCE to 500 CE. India had some of the most complex early vampire beings. Vitala, undead spirits inhabiting corpses, could animate the dead, fed on blood for life force, intelligent, trickster-like, one of the earliest depictions of a corpse-walking vampire. Pisasha, flesh-eating ghouls, they drank blood, lived in darkness. Indian folklore deeply influenced later vampire fiction through colonial contact. Ancient Hebrew and early Christian texts. All right, sorry, gotta turn the page. Lilith, again, reappears in Dead Sea Scrolls, Talmudic writings, portrayed as a night demon, drinker of blood, stealer of infants. Early Christian superstition also hinted at the dead returning from their graves, demons possessing corpses to drink blood. Some early Christian sects believed blood contained the soul, strengthening the connection between blood and spiritual power, which, pay attention to that part because you're going to hear this story and you're going to be like, there it is. Medieval Europe, 500 to 1500 CE. This is where vampire truly begins. The Uper, Slavic lands. Earliest Slavic vampire word, first written record, 1047 CE. Strigoi, Romania. Dead returning from the grave, preyed on villages, could be alive or undead, sometimes shapeshifters, and they fed on blood. The Nachezer, pardon me that I'm an idiot, it's a German word, so forgive me. Undead who consume their shrouds, then victims. Associated with plagues. I know this word. Revenants. That comes from Western Europe. Corpses rising due to curses, sin, or improper burial. Drank blood or spread disease. Medieval Europe had rampant vampire panics, complete with grave exhumations, staking corpses, decapitation rituals, burning bodies, garlic and iron as protections. This era shaped almost all modern vampire tropes. 1700s, the vampire enters the Western imagination, the 18th century vampire epidemic. Real hysteria swept Serbia, Hungary, and Poland. Famous cases: Arnold Paoli, 1726, and Peter Blagojek. That was close, I think. 1725. Witnesses claimed corpses were fresh, blood at the mouth, and attacked villagers. These reports stunned Western Europe and birthed newspaper vampire mania. 1800s, the birth of the modern vampire. 1819, The Vampire by John Poliadori. I'm getting better with these names. Pardon me while I turn the page. First aristocrat, seductive vampire. The basis for Dracula introduced the noble predator concept. 1847, Varney the Vampire. That sounds like a fucking comedy. Serialized drama introduced fangs and sympathetic vampire tropes. 1897 Bram Stoker's Dracula. Classic. The defining vampire novel. Introduced Transylvanian Count, fangs, coffins, garlic, sunlight weaknesses, vampire hunters, and then biting the neck. This novel shaped everything after this. The 1900s and 2000s, cinema creates the modern vampire. 1922, Nosferatu, rat-like, monstrous vampire, ugly son of a bitch. 1931, Bela Lugosi's Dracula. Elegant, aristocratic, iconic cape, accent, and charm. 1960s through the 90s, you had Dark Shadows, Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, romantic vampires. Lame. Then you got Blade, which to me, hands down, one of the best vampire stories ever. It's not sparkly and weird. Let's see. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That show was dope. For those of you who've never watched that, go back and watch that. I don't know where you can find it at. Maybe Netflix? Not sure. 2000s to 2020s. Twilight. Underworld. Fantastic movie. Castlevania. Never played it or watched it. What We Do in the Shadows. Hilarious. Very inappropriate, so do not let your children watch, but hilarious. And then vampires expanded into romance, gore, fantasy, action, erotica, religion, and comedy. So to wrap all that up with a tiny little bow, this next story I'm going to read to you is called The Blood Gospel of the Undying King. And it's if Jesus was actually a vampire and what his disciples did during that time. So I hope you're ready and I hope you enjoy it. See you on the other side. The Blood Gospel of the Undying King. Long before the world knew the name of Jesus of Nazareth, long before the cross became a holy symbol polished by centuries of worship, there was only a small circle of men who followed a pale stranger through the Judean night. His eyes glowed faintly, too faint for mortals to notice, unless they stared too long. His disciples never spoke of it. They never dared. The desert winds howled over the sleeping town of Capernaum, but Jesus stood awake on a hillside, robe fluttering, watching the horizon with ancient hunger. He hadn't slept in more than 60 years, and he would never sleep again. The night sustained him. The moon strengthened him, and the blood of beasts, never humans, not yet, kept the thirst from overwhelming him. His disciples knew the truth. Peter had once stumbled upon him crouched over a goat, jaws crimson, veins blackened with feeding. Jesus wiped his mouth, stood tall, and said only, "This is not what you think, Peter, but it is what I am." Peter's hand trembled on the hilt of his knife. Jesus placed his own hand over it. "Do not be afraid. What I am can save the world. What hunts me would destroy it." And so the disciples understood. Their teacher was not a prophet, not a healer, not merely a holy man. He was something older, something hunted, something that never needed blood. The disciples formed a pact, never to reveal the nature of their master. They became the 13, though the stories later recorded only 12. The 13th was erased from Scripture because he was not a man at all. He was the first Jesus had turned. A child found dying from a fever. Jesus had pressed his bloody wrist to the boy's lips. The boy rose the next dawn, pale, perfect, everlasting. He was called Levinel, the lost disciple. He was the first who needed blood. He was the first who understood Jesus' curse was also a gift. He was the first who killed to survive. Jesus hid the boy for years, fearing the hunters, because the hunters were real, and they had followed him across continents. The vampire hunters did not call themselves hunters. They called themselves the Order of the Sun, an ancient sect predating the Roman Empire. Men and women who believed the undead were an abomination, a corruption of divine fire. Their weapons were old, crosses carved from blessed wood, hammered with silver nails, tipped with silver stakes that glowed faintly in moonlight. They had pursued Jesus long before he was known as the Christ. They knew his body would heal from wounds, but silver slowed the regeneration. They knew holy symbols weakened his kind, not because they were holy, but because belief itself was power. Belief shaped the world. Belief shaped vampires. Belief shaped Jesus. He had not chosen to become what he was. He had been chosen. When the hunters closed in on Jerusalem, Jesus knew the end was near. He gathered his followers in an upper room, candles flickering, shadows long and trembling like frightened spirits. His eyes were the color of dying embers. "My friends," he said, "tonight marks the beginning of the end. What you drink will give you life beyond life. What I give will bind us eternally." He lifted the cup. It was not wine. Everyone at the table knew. His own blood shimmered inside, dark, metallic, and alive. "This is my blood," Jesus said. "My body will fall, but you will not. Drink and carry me with you. No matter what they do to me, you will live." John wept. Peter bowed his head. Lev bared his fangs unconsciously. One by one they drank, and one by one eternity seeped into their bones. But Judas hesitated. Jesus looked into his eyes. "You are not betraying me, Judas. You are completing the plan." Judas nodded, tears falling as Jesus embraced him. "Tell them where to find me," Jesus whispered. "And make sure they bring the cross with the silver stakes." The hunters came at dawn. Jesus offered his hands willingly. He let them bind him. He let them drag him through the streets. When they lifted the cross, the disciples recognized it instantly, not as a symbol of punishment, but as a weapon. The beams were reinforced with ancient cedar believed to repel the undead. The nails were pure silver. The long spike driven through his side was sharpened by the Order of the Sun specifically for him. But he didn't fight. He looked at Mary beneath the cross and whispered something lost to time. Then the hammer fell. Silver burned through his wrists. Blood leaked black and hissing from his wounds. Smoke rose as the sunlight seared his flesh. The Roman soldiers believed they were executing a rebellious preacher. Only the order understood what was truly happening. They were killing the oldest vampire on earth. Jesus screamed, but not in pain, in hunger. In ancient monstrous fury. The sky darkened, the earth trembled, but the cross held him, and for a moment it seemed the world would finally be free of him. Jesus did not resurrect by miracle. He resurrected by blood ritual. The disciples gathered in a hidden cave that night after his burial. Each cut their wrists, each drained their immortal blood into the stone bowl carved by Lev. The blood steamed with power. It churned, alive and eager, as though aware of its purpose. At dawn, they poured their blood over Jesus' corpse. His skin drank it. His veins throbbed, his chest rose. For a moment his eyes opened, terrifying and hungry. A child of moonlight reborn. But something was wrong. Something returned with him. Something darker. Something that grew each time he slept, each time he fed. Jesus walked the earth again, but he was no longer the same. For centuries, Jesus wandered in silence. He changed names, changed identities, changed continents. Wherever he walked, miracles followed, but so did death. Sometimes he saved entire villages from famine. Other times he drained men dry and vanished into the night. The disciples eventually separated, forming covens across the world. Peter became the first bishop of the eternal blood. John founded the Whisper Order in the mountains of Armenia. Lev vanished entirely, rumored to only walk at night, a pale ghost with glowing eyes. But Jesus wandered alone, not out of choice, out of fear, because something inside him was decaying, twisting, corrupting. Immortality was no gift, it was infection. It was hunger weaponized by time, and Jesus felt himself slipping away. Over the next 1,000 years, Jesus lived as a wandering monk in Tibet, a physician during the Black Plague, a sailor aboard a doomed Portuguese ship, a preacher in a hidden forest village, a scholar in medieval Europe, a nameless wanderer drifting across continents. Each life ended the same way. He would grow too thirsty, bodies would be found drained, the hunters, now countless and global, would close in, and Jesus would disappear again. But the disciples always found him. They served him, protected him, fed him when he starved, yet the more blood he drank, the less humanity remained. In the 1800s, Jesus resurfaced in France as a man named Lucien Charbonneau, pale, charismatic, brilliant, and increasingly unstable. Peter confronted him in a dim cathedral lit only by moonlight. "You are losing yourself," Peter warned. "You feed without restraint. You have forgotten our purpose." Jesus laughed, a chilling, hollow sound. "My purpose?" His fangs glimmered. "My purpose was never salvation, it was survival. You once sacrificed yourself for us, and now I regret it," Peter snapped back, horrified. Jesus continued, "Centuries of watching humanity devour itself, centuries of hiding like an animal, no more. I will become what I was meant to be." "And what is that?" Peter whispered. "The ruler of the night." Jesus lunged. Peter barely escaped, and the disciples knew the truth. Their king had become a monster. Jesus began creating new vampires, not dozens, but thousands. He walked through war-torn towns at night, choosing the dying, the broken, and the desperate. He whispered promises of eternal life. He spread his blood like plague. His followers called him the first light. The hunters renamed him the Night King. The world trembled beneath the shadow of a being who could not die, whose resurrection was powered by the blood of his own immortal army. Humanity was no longer fighting legend. Humanity was fighting a god. The modern order of the sun united nations, religions, and governments. They tracked global disappearances, genetic anomalies, ancient bloodlines, the disciples' movements. They discovered Jesus had fled to an abandoned monastery hidden deep in the Romanian mountains. The sky that night was moonless, the air freezing. The hunters carried weapons of silver, ultraviolet light, and ancient relics. Inside the monastery, candles burned with black flames. Jesus sat on a throne of bones. "Have you come to worship?" he asked. "No," the hunters answered. "We've come to end the world you've planned." Jesus rose, wings of shadow unfolding behind him. "Then let us finish what we began 2,000 years ago." The monastery erupted in chaos. Disciples descended from the ceiling like spiders. Hunters swung silver chains. The air filled with screams, human and inhuman. At the center of the carnage, Jesus, unstoppable, tearing through hunters as though made of paper. No weapon could kill him. No stake could pierce deep enough. No sunlight reached this forgotten valley until Lev appeared, the 13th disciple, the first turned, the one who never aged, never questioned, never left Jesus' side. But tonight he came holding something wrapped in cloth. "Master," Lev whispered, bowing. "I found it." Jesus paused. Lev unwrapped the object. It was the original cross, the cedar wood still etched with ancient symbols, those silver stakes still stained with Jesus' blood. Jesus froze. "You would betray me?" he whispered. Lev wept. "You are no longer the man who saved me." And Lev drove the cross into his master's heart. Jesus fell to his knees, skin still blistered. His bones cracked, the blood hissed as the silver burned him from the inside. The ground started shaking, causing the ceiling to collapse. The monastery crumbled, the hunters fled. The disciples fought among themselves, some trying to save their master, others trying to stop him. Jesus reached for Lev with one trembling hand. "Why?" Lev sobbed. "Because you taught me to choose the world over myself." And Jesus turned to ash. This time, his disciples had no blood left to raise him. Years passed, the order declared victory. The disciples scattered into legend. The world returned to normal. Until a man appeared in Sao Paulo, walking barefoot down a crowded street. His eyes were the color of dying embers. His shadow moved a fraction slower than his step. He smiled at a child. The child froze, staring into ancient, impossible eyes. The man whispered, "The blood remembers." And somewhere in the mountains, Lev felt a familiar chill crawl down his spine. Jesus had risen again, not by ritual, not by disciples, but by the world believing he was dead. And belief shapes reality. Belief resurrects gods. Belief resurrects monsters. The Night King walks the earth once more, this time without mercy, this time without disciples to restrain him. And humanity will learn the final truth. All vampires, all descendants, all immortals will carry the blood of Christ. The Undying King has returned, and he is hungry. All right, guys. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that short story. It was very fun to write, very fun to come up with. I was very excited about it for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Again, please subscribe, like, and share if you feel compelled. I would greatly appreciate it. I apologize for the mess back here. I'm trying to get a new studio set up, so we're moving some things around, but I didn't want to take time away from the episode, the regular scheduled episodes, to do this. So I hope you don't mind a little bit of a mess. But it is what it is. I'm here for the content. I'm not here for flashiness. So thank you guys. I love you. Stay safe. And remember, don't drink that.